Hello, I'm John Coleman from ApocatastasisInstitute, an Institute for the Humanities and Alternative College and High School here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. The purpose of this broadcast is to hove in to number 268 of A Conversation With, today with Ava from Gaia University. And we have a lot to get into with educational reform. This is very much our bailiwick here, and there's a great deal ahead of us. Ava's site will be down below, in addition to any resources she wishes to include when we knock off our broadcast today. They'll all be down below, as will those of Apocatastasis. Just one announcement on this end, and that is to avail yourself if you're in the market for in-depth humanities education, but can't commit to a full course or that sort of schedule. Avail yourself of our Substack program. Every week there is premium content focused on the humanities, in particular history and literature, teaching this sequentially over, indeed, from the dawn of man until today, using our different resources there. So that's our Substack program. And with that, scene to Ava, welcome. How are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, John. I'm doing well.
And how is San Francisco today of our show? Here in Connecticut, very moist and very cold and damp.
We have sunny, warm weather. It's actually, we're going to be having a bunch of hot weather in our future. So next week it'll hit 80, which is unusual for us. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So tell us a bit about yourself. We're going to get your website up here, but even before we get into Gaia U, tell us about yourself, especially with your interest in education and just your background there, Ava.
Yeah, sure. So Ava Klinger here. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. And so for those of you maybe calling in from outside of the US or listening in from outside of the US, that's right kind of smack dab in the country, the Rocky Mountains. I was diagnosed with ADHD as a young child and definitely struggled with school in elementary school and middle school. Kind of hit my stride in high school. I figured out how to play by the rules and get good enough grades to go to college. I went to CU Boulder and actually studied humanities with an emphasis in Russian history, German language, and Russian literature as well. So that's a little bit about my initial background. I did graduate college right around 2008, so it was quite difficult to get a job right after school there, and I ended up working in odd jobs that I didn't really enjoy and just to get by. Until in 2010, I stumbled upon an ad for a job with Gaia University. Now, my dad is a Gaia scientist. He studied under James Lovelock, and the Gaia theory was something that I grew up hearing a lot about when I was little. So when I saw Gaia U, it all just felt very synchronistic, and I went on the website and called the number, and a woman named Kirsten Liegman answered the phone and conducted an interview with me right there. And then she had gotten a bunch of applications, but I was the only person that actually went on the website and called the phone number. So we had a bunch of interesting similarities and connections, and I was hired right there on the spot as an administrative assistant. So this was about 16 years ago. I started working with Gaia U in that form for quite some time, eventually became registrar and operations manager, as well as director of student services, until Gaia U took a step back from offering new programs to students in 2021 after the pandemic, and the health of Leora Adler, one of our founders and the co-president at the time. Leora actually passed away in 2024. And once that happened, Jennifer Morgan, who has been a colleague of mine and was the director of advisory services and held many, many other roles with Gaia U for a very long time, she was asked to kind of step in and take the reins, and she wanted me to be there by her side. So in just about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, Jen and I put together an offer, and then we were given the reins of Gaia U. So we've been back in operation for about a year and a few months now.
Ava, as I queue up your website here,
Yeah.
tell us a bit about Gaia U, the name itself, and also the international part, as you like. And then also, if you can tell us a bit about the history of this work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Gaia theory, at least, is the theory that James Lovelock proposed, that the Earth is not just this rock in the middle of space that we live on, but actually a living system in and of itself, right? So we individually have like a body system, with a respiratory system and a circulatory system. But the Earth has those as well. So the Earth is actually a living system, and we are a part of that living system. So it encouraged us, that theory really challenged traditional scientific thinking at the time that was basically dependent on mathematical models and, a very different way of looking at the Earth as just something that is much more easy to predict than what a living system is, right? So this is all information that I got from my dad growing up. He actually is a private scientist here in California. He's in Big Sur. His name is Dr. Lee Klinger. You can look him up, and he's doing some amazing work as well with trees and forestry in Central Coast, California. But back to Gaia U. Gaia U was established with this core thinking: the Earth is a living system. Humans, how do we, if the Earth is a living system, how do we then tailor, design, and live our lives in accordance with that, right? So how do we design and adapt our thinking to the Earth's system, right? So that we can better live here on the planet. And so back in 2005, I believe it was, Leora Adler and Andrew Langford met. They had been Leora was big in the eco tourism community. She had started an eco village in Mexico and had also done this like touring circus type situation, but was very focused on the community aspect of kind of what permaculture is, right? And Andrew Langford out of the UK, he's from Totnes, UK, and he was very much involved in the permaculture world. And the permaculture, he helped develop the permaculture diploma program and was a part of the Permaculture Association of Great Britain for a long time. So the two of them met, and they sparked an idea of, what if we create a university that is not just this like checks and balances of what information has been retained, so, we know modern education as this process of just downloading information to our brains and then proving that we know it, right? But we know, at least from my experience growing up as a kid with ADHD, and, I would like memorize stuff for a test and then it was out. It was gone, like a week later, it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't take that test today. I don't care about that information. It's just, it doesn't have any relation or relationship to me as a human being. Why would I need that, right? There's no story involved. There's no care in that. So, they started looking at, how does learning really create impact? And that's through action learning. That's through projects. That's through actually getting your hands dirty, getting on the ground, doing the work, and learning through that experience, which a lot of the times means making mistakes. But how can we create I think one of the main questions they had, and I don't know, a lot of this is speculation. Andrew would be a better person to ask about like the origins of Gaia than me. But what I can imagine, they did was speculate, like, what is a safe container we can set up for people to fail well and learn through that process, right? In order to create this impact. So that was the origin of Gaia U. Our whole programs are kind of set up quite differently. We don't have tests. We don't have, there aren't, lectures that you're expected to, prove that you have X amount of knowledge in. What we do is basically project-based work. So there are some modules that are online that there are assignments for and whatnot. But that's not necessarily like graded on a traditional level. And then the main credits that the students are able to receive through doing a program with Gaia U are project-based. So they choose 4 projects, they document that process with the support of a main advisor and others in the community. But it's a very different structure, and I'll go into that kind of setup and how that all works in a little bit. Did I answer that question well?
Yes, you sure did, Ava. Thank you for that. And actually, this might be a good time for me, actually, for my more, I guess, humanities perch, maybe a little bit different from the living system of the earth that you laid out. But I would very much agree that this language that we have, I would use the language of whether it comes to education or even the natural world or society, we have this very Newtonian understanding, this mechanistic, and
yes.
Even with our own bodies, I always point this out with people. It's not a unique observation. We speak of ourselves like a car. Like our liver is our filter. Our what is it? Our lungs are like bellows. Our heart, God help us, we can have a whole rant here, which I'll behave myself. Our heart pumps blood. All of this stuff. It's like a machine, and this casts a shadow on so much of the so-called modern world. What do you think, Ava, in the big picture and kind of the outlook of Gaia U, in this society, in mainstream education, but not just mainstream, because a lot of this is, in my opinion, aped in alternative so-called. What is the role of education in this society? Is that even something we've answered? And yes, what function does it serve in this society? Not what function should it serve or what Gaia U's vision, but how do you appraise what calls itself the educational field by and large?
So I think that we're at a big crossroads right now with that, because I think that traditional education was designed that the system was designed at a time that we needed people to use their brains to basically be databases, right? To have and hold information, right? And we're seeing that that's not really necessary anymore. So traditional education, I think, is really suffering, and we're seeing a lot of issues with how it has been designed, how it's been structured. There's a lot of hesitation to change or adapt in a lot of these systems. So it's very rigid. We see a lot of rigidity in higher education. We see a lot of kind of stuck thinking and inability to adapt and integrate. And I think that, because the status symbol piece is maybe not as impactful as it once was. Like a bachelor's degree does not automatically guarantee you a career in a job that can pay off your debt, So I think it's losing its value. I think it's losing its foothold. And I think the whole thing needs to be redesigned from scratch. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, and how we can kind of learn to build in these systems of agility and robustness to avoid fragility in the system, right?
Yes, it's remarkable how bureaucracies have this tendency to ignore what's happening outside, and I can think of certain other bureaucracies that do this. The civil state does that in terms of other power nodes that have been growing in business and so forth. And I would say even more so though is education uh, I don't know what it is, but it has very little adaptability. Armies, militaries are known for this too. They say they're always fighting the last war. Uh, but it's amazing that this system is so outdated,
Yeah.
um, and shows uh, such little inclination to change whatsoever. Even
Yeah.
though, I mean, even after 2008, you know this as soon as I do, that the enrollments in college never rebounded, and the birth rates were also severely impacted, which is something now 12 years later, get it, college age, now the colleges are really feeling both the brunt of the drop off in enrollment and the dip in births. And very little indeed has been done. And I've been impressed in a negative way in these 13 years here in Connecticut. The inertness trying to do collaborations with different schools, public schools, or different outlets, colleges, and so forth. What is going on with that? If we could palpitate before we get back to Gaia U, because this is
Yeah.
I mean, if Gaia U and ApocatastasisInstitute and a lot of other good works out here are trying to address this problem, what is this spirit that we're bumping up against?
It's a fixed mindset, you know? It's a fixed mindset that has been it's been designed with so little ability to integrate adaptability and flexibility that it's become a very rigid, very fixed system. So when you see rigid, fixed systems that no longer work, the best way to get rid of them is to tear them down, you know? Like if it's not able to bend and move with the times or with the needs of the people, it's going to collapse, right? So when we're looking at like designing systems, then we're thinking, oh, how can this be avoided in the future? We need to ensure that we're building in agility, we're building in flexibility to the initial design. Like that has to be one of the main values. You know, I think that one thing I did read an article yesterday that was kind of surprising, in that a lot of traditional universities, or at least a few, are switching to, instead of a 4-year bachelor's degree, are switching to a 3-year bachelor's degree model. So that, you know, I mean, is that enough? I don't think so. I don't think that will have much of an impact at all, but you know, at least there is some, like I can see some trends from the news and stuff around, oh, maybe they're like open to shifting, like at least there's some flexibility around the credits, you know, like how many credits are needed for a bachelor's degree. So yeah, I think it's the fixed system, the rigidity, that's the main issue that we're coming across. And I think we've all come across that energy in the past, and it's like this more, it's an older energy. It's something that has been in routine, in pattern for so long that it doesn't remember a time where it needed to be agile and flexible. And so that's the energetic that I think we're bumping up against, and there's gonna be friction in that sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would even just add to that there has to be a break. The system has to break to reality sooner or later. This is the natural world. Getting back to your theme here, this is also human societies, individuals. One can prop up a lie, or can prop up something erroneous, or have shortcomings, whatever language you want to use. Eventually, though, the reality will dominate. And I am fond of using this analogy with the Mississippi River to a lot of things in life. Since the Second World War, the Mississippi has been trying, the Delta down near New Orleans has been trying to move. This happens with rivers. They move, as you know, as the audience knows. Vicksburg, the battlefield in the Civil War, is about 5 miles away from the river compared to where the gunboats were. So the Mississippi moves too. The South, near New Orleans, that's been moving. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, since World War II, has been sucking up, has been dredging the Gulf of Mexico, trying to prop up the south of Louisiana. And it's not working. and this is a simile to the education world. And the more the river tries to move, the more they try to dredge out, and the more the south of Louisiana falls into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And yet the almost zombie attempt to keep the outlet of the river around New Orleans is creating and this is now moving to education, and hear your thoughts on the matter. This is where we're at. I mean, getting back to our initial points about this mechanistic model, this Newtonian model, and that's something has to break. I mean, we've indebted to these loan sharks. We've indebted now at least 2 generations of young people, which has knock-on effects beyond just personal hassle with these loans.
Yeah, it's generational wealth.
Go on.
Yeah, it's generational wealth that's being impacted, and those people's children and their potential at a brighter future, right? So you're right. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, not at all. Not at all. And this is, something here at ApocatastasisInstitute that I have to deal with, and I'd be interested to take your mind on the matter. When one has a very idealistic vision with education, as you approach things, as we approach things here, as other people with different works do their approaches, how, from Gaia U's point of view, how do you interact with the Borg, so to speak? And what I mean by that here with ApocatastasInstitute, and this is something we're going through right now, is we're trying to grow and with funding, with grants, with the legal system, I only this year, after 13 years, I was finally, people begged me and pleaded, please open a bank account, John. So we won't have to mail you money in books anymore. But the trepidation is getting sucked into the system, because I've seen this happen with schools and with other good works. So I don't know if this is a consciousness with Gaia U. How do you deal with the power structures educationally and so forth, and maintain yourself?
Yeah, so one of the main things, and maybe this is a good time to bring up that graphic that I shared with you of the 4-leaf clover. As I've personally learned to design in my own life and my own world, in my opinion, design anything needs to begin with values and a values assessment. And not only does it need to begin with a values assessment, but it needs to keep coming back to that as adaptation and as things change. So as Jen and I were kind of redesigning and revitalizing Gaia U, we saw this opportunity for us as we were moving into leadership, as this opportunity for us to go through this process with Gaia U, because it had been operating for 15 years before that point, or almost 20 years actually before that point. So looking at values, holding those values, being like, okay, why are we doing this? What is the point? Like, if there's not an alignment in values with our actions, then we're not doing the work that we set out to do. And decisions need to be made from that values perspective. Out of values comes the action. As you can see in this graphic, I don't know if you can see the values part at the bottom there, but there is a little piece
on the stem here. On the stem.
Yeah, it says values at the bottom. And then, I'll go over the rest of that later. But yeah, I would say that, a way to not like corrupt any system or design that we're working on, and that has been a thought in our structure. We actually developed the ecosystem of Gaia U is built around a trust as well.
Mm.
And the trust is an owner of the LLC, and the trust is basically there to ensure the ethics of what we're set out to do, and make sure that we are acting in alignment with those values.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And it's funny you you have that very good graphic, much better than my one here, but I have a similar one at the school. It's somewhere here. I won't bog down our time,
Yeah.
but
No, that's
it's a
awesome.
similar earthy schematic. Let me just try
Mm,
this one here. Let me just try this with soil, but it's most appropriate. Uh,
mm,
that simile, uh,
yeah.
for any, I think, for any sort of education approach, it's because things are in the symbiosis in life, and that's
Yeah.
actually, I think, one of the great delicts of what I call Rockefeller education is. Okay, not this page here. I'll put a link for everyone who's interested in my crummy
Yeah.
schema. It's not nearly as good as this one here.
No worries.
Um, But yeah, I mean, the excision and the separation, like almost like ice cube trays in the Rockefeller schools, of life. And so you have the children, in one place in the town, and then the old people are warehoused in another place, and the butcher is over there, and everything is completely separated in this Newtonian system. And I think, to your schematic and mine, that this really reorients ourselves to, as you point out, this sort of hierarchy of approach, starting with values and leading to action. You even have a little compost heap here of learning, which produces. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Wisdom, and we'll get into it
Yeah.
soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Now, Ava, what type of people are typically attracted to Gaia University, and also what type of formation, what type of enrichment, and what type of after effects, and indeed what type of society do you see the students of Gaia U going on to impact? So, who's coming to you, and what is the vision for the souls that depart from you?
Yeah. So I've noticed working as in my role as registrar, in addition to COO, I've noticed a lot of people coming to us in points of transition. So that could be somebody who wants to quit their corporate job and make a living doing something that they're more passionate about. That could be somebody who has, left a relationship that's no longer serving them and has this newfound independence. But all these points in life where we need to change something up because something is not working, right? Like something needs to change for the energy to move forward because we're feeling stuck, right?
Mm.
So that's the type. So in that, we have a very, very diverse group of students, anywhere from, I think our youngest student is 19. And we've got a graduate who was in her 80s when she graduated.
Wow.
So we have generations of students. There's really, I would say the bulk of our students are in their 30s, maybe 40s, so about middle-aged. What they basically, I think one of the reasons why they're coming to Gaia U is that traditional education did not serve them well in
Mm.
the past, and that they see all the other programs that are made available are going to be too similar to like buying them into a job that doesn't necessarily solve any of the problems or the issues that they're, like coming to us with in the first place. So with Gaia U, what they do through their program is not just, receive information and learning, but they're also working on these projects, as I mentioned earlier. So during their pathway, they're getting experience, they're gaining a portfolio that is demonstratable. Like they can show this portfolio to potential employers, to people that they want to get investments from. So it's a very it's the proof of the learning is very obvious. And I think with AI today, people can just write papers for an assignment like from a prompt, and they didn't do any of that, right? So a grade doesn't necessarily equate to that person's knowledge. Whereas through this project-based learning, there's really no cheat. There's no way to cheat that system. You're going to gain the knowledge, you're going to gain the experience, and you're going to be able to showcase what you've achieved and what you've learned through that process.
Yeah, it's amazing with the AI topic, which comes up on this channel often enough in our different series. It only becomes a problem if one accepts some of what I believe are errors in the mainstream models of education. If one accepts this mechanistic, economically focused, obsessively focused, end or telos to education, and you accept, if one accepts certain of the other, what I believe are errors of modernity, including everything is for profit, the object itself has no value inherently in this system, everything's just for some future potential value, et cetera, then you do have this existential crisis that the Rockefeller schools, whether it's grade school or tertiary colleges and so forth, are facing. And if one accepts these errors, then you come to ultimately see these as Newtonian systems that can be gamed. Just like you can think you can game the Mississippi River, you can think you can game the education system. So why not just use AI, and then they'll run the AI paper through like another AI program to make it seem like a 13-year-old or 20-year-old. But it's all but once you remove it from the proper telos, yes. Any thoughts?
Well, because we've developed our system not for a living process, right? We've developed these mechanical systems to respond to mechanics. It's like so the way that the human brain, I think, and a lot of like Freudian concepts and stuff has been, and the way that like learning has been explained and the way it's been designed in the past was very mechanical, right? Like you have an instructor stand in front of the class, they present on this lecture, the students take notes, they are tested, they get the knowledge, there's this A, B, C, D, whatever system that grades them to identify and so it's this very like non-living system that it's robotic, right? So of course robots are going to be able to game the robotic system that we've designed for humans, right? So
By the way, people who are interested, if you want to help Apocatastasis out, you can buy it, or you can just Google it. We'll look up an essay entitled "The Murder Machine" from Patrick Pearse, the Irish revolutionary from the time of the First World War. The Murder Machine. He was a schoolman himself, and he really, 100 years ago during the First War, he's getting into this language and the whole mechanistic language that prevailed in his time in the British model imposed on Ireland. And it's the same that we have here. And part of this is an observation an interesting guy called Carol Quigley brought out in a very interesting book in certain circles called Tragedy and Hope. And Quigley writes, and he's writing this in the 60s, Ava, but he's saying one of the results, maybe one of the deliberate results of this Rockefeller education is to basically create he doesn't use this language, but a proletariat of people who are discouraged. One of the results, whether or not it was the intention, Allahu Alam, but one of the results of this, obviously, is that it produces a certain strata of people who feel discouraged. That one of the unwritten lessons of this horrible model that we're given is that it produces these discouraged souls who believe that the life of the mind, and to say nothing of the type of integrated life that Gaia University advocates, that this thing is not for them. And I've met people like that, and I reckon you have too, maybe potential students or whatever. They got burned out. I think you even alluded to it. They got burned out with what was given to them as education. And many of these people, they never hear about Gaia U. They never hear about this or that. And they go through the whole life is that the life of the mind is not for them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, it's, I think that when we are looking at why are we not seeing as much impact, and maybe you can go back to that graphic again and I can go through these, the different parts of the four-leaf clover there. But the reason we're not seeing a lot of this impact is that we've got a lot of people who are very motivated to see change and very motivated to like shift mindsets, shift thinking, shift systems. However, they are they're either burned out, people get distracted very easily, and these systems that are outside kind of operating to influence us are doing this intentionally to distract us, to stress us out, to, you know, create this like freeze, flight, denial type response in us.
Yes.
So one of the biggest parts of what Gaia U is teaching, we recognize you don't need to necessarily, like, you can figure out and find a place to learn calculus online, probably for free, right? There are online courses for everything for free, right? But one of the things that the four different pieces of this, and I think in some ways the most important, or where we need to start with, is the trauma integration work. With how we, like, with what is going on in the world and how we've been, how we haven't been taught to like support our own nervous systems in regulating and getting to a functioning space where we can make decisions well. Like, this is crucial. This is, before we can do anything, we need to get to a space where we're not burning out, we're not panicking, we're not completely denying or refusing because the truth is too scary. We're going to be able to get through this trauma integration work. We're going to be able to get ourselves to a space where it's like, okay, yes, this is our present reality. Here we are in the moment. Let's integrate how we feel about that. Sure, it sucks, but like, we can't be in that moment of panic or chaos or distraction or whatever forever. We're going to find a space of regulation so that we can then be able to make good decisions. We can then be able to design better. We can be able to work together better. And we can receive support more effectively. Like, that trauma integration piece really helps support the whole system. So in Gaia U, that is one of the key threads that I don't see anybody else really focusing on, that's, you know, looking at the full higher ed picture. So our main advisors are all trauma informed, and sometimes trained in trauma integration support work. And this is like the language we use. We have accommodated and designed our systems to make sure that there is room for people going through stuff, and that they have whatever support they need in integrating whatever is traumatic going on for them. So not to be like, that's your personal business, you keep that to yourself type thing. Like, if this is keeping you from success, like, let's figure this out and get you the support that you need to move forward.
Excellent. Yes, this aspect of trauma is not nearly focused on enough, much less when it comes to the educational world and in terms of formal education. If people are interested, just as a little on-ramp to this huge topic, if you go on our website at ApocatastasIs to our Health and Physical Culture Center, there's all sorts of health-related documents. There's one, and it must be 60 or 70 points that the author brings up about birthing practices in this society, which was also created by John Rockefeller's people, incidentally. And okay, you say, 20, 30 rather dramatic things that we just take par for the course. We just assume that's how it is. And then you realize after a while, there is no way on earth that this is an accident.
Yeah.
And that's just one little sliver of the subsequent life of trauma that is very subtly inculcated by the so-called rulers of this kingdom.
Yeah.
Now, how do these other bits here, anyhow, Ava, how do they fit into this? Because you obviously have the clover here with, that's one organism. So how do these other fellas fit in?
Yeah, so I very much see the trauma integration and the community repair being kind of like hand in hand. In order to be able to do community repair and work well with others, you need to have somewhat of a handle on your own trauma integration work, right? And you need to be in a space, in a resourced space where you are able to hear another person's opinion and integrate that into your own thinking. I think that this is one of the biggest issues we have in our society right now, is not being able to hear one another, not being able to communicate well, not being able to work together in community. And the process of repair, there's a wonderful practitioner, Dr. Hazel Grace, and they operate outside of in California, I believe outside of Davis. And they host a workshop on the art of repair that I was able to attend, and also I integrated some of this work into my volunteer work as well with the Burning Man temple crew. So that's a little side project of mine that I integrated some of this trauma integration and community repair work on. And, so when we're looking at functioning as a university ecosystem, we need to know that there's a system, because conflict is always going to happen. We can't just hope for conflict to not happen. We can expect it, but how do we prepare ourselves and others for the outcomes of that conflict? How do we make generative conflict that actually helps grow mindsets, integrate more diversity in our thinking, and create more flexibility and agility in the system itself? So community repair is a really, really important piece of this design. And then on the other two sides, we see eco-social literacy. This is, understanding these, as we've been talking about, like patterns and how systems and systems in nature work, right? And just understanding systems and the ecology of systems better than we do, right? And integrating that into our own thinking around the systems that we're looking to design. And then the final piece of that is the design thinking. So how do we learn with all this information? How can, once we're in a really good space where we can function well, make good decisions, we're resourced, we are grounded, we understand, we've got the context that we need, we've got the community repair structures in place for when, conflict erupts. How can we then, from this grounded space, figure out how to design a system that actually can create an impact? So you'll see impact at the center there. Impact is this big word, buzzword, whatever. Everybody wants to create impact, impact, impact. But how does that actually happen? Like, what's the recipe? What is the real recipe for making sure impact can flourish so that impact can actually come about? So you'll see in this whole system, we've got like the support structures that are a little bit more external to the system, coming down through the sun and the rain. We see the compost of the plant going back into the system and into the soil as this learning that's kind of becoming wisdom through that process. And then we know that starts back the process up again through.
Look at that! There's a little worm there. Look at that! Look at that for detail. Get a little worm here.
I know, and we like to say that little worm is our main advisor. So the main advisor is the little worm helping you churn the learning into wisdom.
How funny! Yeah. That's great. Little detail there.
Yeah.
And when it comes to support here, Ava, you have the sun here and the cloud. Is that community support, or how does that? What does that look like actually? Is it in collaborations with other like-minded outfits, or how does that look?
Yeah, so that We like to think of these kind of external supports, maybe not external, they are a part of the system, but not as like intricately, not as like closely related to this one tiny ecosystem that we're looking at here. But that's like financial support. So we do have a scholarship fund that we've raised money for through private donors. So those donors, through their financial contributions, are able to support the students and the project, right? So that can look like financial support. That can be like the support of your loved ones, your family, your community, you know, that can be, you know, your partner taking over more shifts, taking care of the kid while you're studying, you know, like, so support is this general big thing that, you know, I think that another piece of kind of the design processes that we put people through is mapping out your support network and really looking at like what are like the zones of that? Like what are the closest people in your support network, like that you can probably rely on a little bit more, and then building that all the way out. So that you can build in a support structure and a support web to allow you the space and the capacity to actually make the most impact.
Excellent. And Ava, as we approach the top of the hour and want to respect your time, and you're very busy, no doubt, in San Francisco, where should people begin with your website, especially if they're interested in involving themselves more with your school there?
Yeah, so we have some free resources available under the free offerings tab. There is
Always popular.
Yeah, we've got a free course called Regenerative Livelihoods by Design. And then we have the Eco-Social Design book that Andrew Langford, one of our founders, authored. And that Eco-Social Design book is the kind of template of the first certificate course that we have available. So you can go to programs, and there's the Eco-Social Design certificate. If you wanted to sign up for a program, that is I believe, 4-month course. And then we also do have degree and diploma programs. We've got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a postgraduate diploma. We also do a permaculture diploma as well. So, yeah.
And how many people reach you, Ava? Do you have a main web, how do you say, a main email address for the school?
Yeah,
there?
if you're curious to reach out to me individually, you can reach out to my email address. It's ava@gaiau.org. You can also email info@gaiau.org. But ava@gaiau.org will get you straight to me.
Grand. Well, there we go. That was a fine introduction to Gaia University, and all of that indeed will be down below. We hope to have Ava and her confederates on in the future to get more into some of these nitty-gritty topics when it comes to education and educational reform.
Wonderful.
And this ed field is not going to be around for much longer. We can talk about how much longer the corpse will be standing upright, but Gaia University, ApocatastasInstitute, many other worthy works are going to be inheriting this kingdom. And when this thing collapses, we're going to have a lot of work on our hands. And that sounds great. Yep. But right now, for all of us, we need to be preparing to inherit all of this. Yeah. And that includes the headaches that come with growth as well. So patronize, I say to the audience, patronize Ava's work there with Gaia University.
Thank you.
And establish some contacts there, and then you can shimmy over to ApocatastasInstitute and muck about on a much less impressive website than Gaia use. I can tell you that much. Ava, thank you especially for your time today.
Thank you so much.